Bonjour tout le monde. Merci beaucoup pour votre patience. Thank you very much, everyone, for your patience. I know it's warm out. We ordered the weather especially to ensure everybody have a good time while they're here in New Brunswick, but it also means that while you're waiting, it gets a little warmer. So we appreciate your patience. Nous avons eu des belles discussions aujourd'hui. Comme j'avais mentionné ce matin, c'était concentré sur l'économie canadienne. C'est important de travailler ensemble comme Premier ministre, comme province, territoire et comme pays entier pour faire tout ce qu'on peut pour créer des emplois, des possibilités et bien sûr la croissance économique pour aider les familles canadiennes autour du pays. Our talks today have centered around trade. We have discussed, as I mentioned this morning, the U.S. relationship. We had a great meeting with Ambassador McNaughton. Then after I spoke with you last, we continue to talk about how we can strengthen our trading relationship with our U.S. partner. We also discuss opportunities for us to collaborate together on diversifying our markets, and we discussed internal trade. Comme vous le savez, le commerce avec les États-Unis, c'est très important pour l'économie canadienne. Nous avons parlé du besoin de parler avec les Américains davantage sur l'importance pour l'économie américaine qui font le commerce avec nous ici au Canada. One thing that was mentioned and that we continue to discuss after Ambassador McNaughton's presentation was the need for us to start to do everything we can to talk to grassroots Americans, as one person put it. So we were discussing on how we could accomplish that, and we came up with, I guess, a term that we'll use and coin for this approach. We want to now push a Fox News approach. And the idea there is that instead of going to speak to the New York Times, we need to start to go on news outlets that maybe don't agree that trade with Canada is important. We need to not just go to Washington to meet decision makers. We also need to go meet Americans to convince them of everything that is important to their economy when it comes to trade with Canada. So there was definitely a long discussion about how we could work together to shift our approach to ensure that we go to the base of those that may have ill feelings towards trade in free trade in general, and of course trade with Canada. And we're going to work together with the embassy and of course our federal counterparts to come up with ways in which we can ensure that we're getting our message across to more Americans, and specifically to Americans that may have ill feelings toward free trade. Alors, nous allons travailler ensemble pour essayer
we'll be working together to try and change our approach somewhat, not only talk to the people who agree with us that trade between the U.S. and Canada is important to both our economies, but also talk to those people and certainly talk more with those people who do not agree that there needs to be a good free trade agreement between our two countries. So we will continue to work together to see what approach we can take to
with
accomplish
that said, we are still going to do everything we can to make sure decision makers and influencers realize the importance of trade with the U.S. We are going to have an advocacy effort collectively come February in Washington, when the governors of the United States will be meeting for their national meeting. Of course, it's important to communicate with them. So it certainly won't be either or in terms of our approaches. We'll certainly do the grassroots Fox News approach as well as talk to key decision makers and influencers. De plus, nous avons parlé de comment nous pouvons collaborer.
Also, we talked about how we can collaborate to penetrate other markets for our export products. So we will be working together in the coming months to see what we can do to open up other opportunities for our exports to other countries. And of course, we talked about the need to do everything we possibly can to also diversify our infrastructure so that we can attain that objective.
That CETA, the CPTPP represent for the diversification we want to see when it comes to our exports. We also talked about how we are going to do everything we can to communicate with each other internally as a country, to give each other intel on what is being said in the U.S. and collaborate more when we are going abroad looking for new customers and to increase our exports in different markets. We agreed to ask for a First Minister's meeting on the economy. given all of the things that we discussed when it comes to trade, including our relationship with the U.S., including the need for our country to diversify our markets, and including internal trade, we believe that having all the premiers and the Prime Minister together to discuss the Canadian economy by the end of this calendar year would be in the best interest of our economy, our future economic prosperity, and the quality of life of Canadian families. De plus, nous avons parlé de comment c'est important d'avoir un environnement réglementaire solide et plus visible, des réseaux de transport efficaces, un bilan environnemental exemplaire et l'ouverture à des marchés nouveaux et diversifiés. Nous avons parlé de l'importance pour notre marché du travail d'avoir des groupes sous-représentés de notre économie, avoir la chance d'avoir la formation pour accueillir les compétences nécessaires
that they can acquire the necessary skills to help us build a strong labor force here in Canada. And we talked about how important our labor force is to improve opportunities for all Canadians.
The continued efforts we need to put in together as a country to have robust and predictable regulatory environments, efficient transportation systems, a reputable environment track record, and as mentioned, a focus on accessing new and diverse markets, whether it be through infrastructure, investments, and other types of initiatives. We talked about the importance of having an inclusive labor market, making sure that underrepresented groups are able to obtain the job skills training that they need to be able to access the workforce and help us strengthen our workforce and ultimately our economy. And we talked about the importance of labor mobility, which will help benefit all regions and all Canadians, ensuring a strong economy for all. Alors avec ça dit, ça me fera plaisir.
So with that, I would be very happy now to take your question.
Hi, Premier. David Cochran with CBC News. I apologize, but I'm going to ask you about something completely unrelated to everything you just talked about.
No worries.
It's a provincial issue. We're told that last night police in Fredericton ordered the closure of all of the marijuana shops in that city. Is this an independent police action, or is this something done at the direction of your government? And did you play any role in this as the Attorney General for New Brunswick?
I played absolutely no role. This is in fact the first I'm hearing of this, but this will not change the answer that we have given numerous times over the last few months when asked similar questions. It is very important for people to follow the law as it is today. There are no exceptions to following the law as it is today. We know that there is going to be the legalization of cannabis by the federal government in mid-October, and as a province we're going to prepare for that to make sure we keep New Brunswickers safe when it comes to production, distribution, and the sale of cannabis. But I can tell you that we are also going to ensure that laws are followed as they are written today. So without knowing the specifics of the situation you just spoke about, I can tell you that the same answer will prevail as has been for the last few months. People need to follow the law as it is written today. I can't speak for other provinces and territories. I would assume they would say similar things, if not the exact same thing, but certainly that is the case in New Brunswick.
And just going back to what you did talk about in your Fox News strategy, how quickly, how aggressively will you try to get on platforms that are conservative and right-wing leaning, say, in the United States and are the favorites of President Trump? And how much of your time would you expect the premiers to spend out of country or speaking to people out of country trying to push this agenda?
Well, I think we should be taking significant steps and as rapidly as possible. I mean, this is of the utmost importance for the future economic prosperity of our country and for our families. We need to have robust trade between Canada and the U.S. And let me just again underline, it is important for us to have robust trade with the U.S. for our economy, and it's important for the U.S. economy that they have robust trade with us. So we need to communicate that. The facts are on our side, so we need to get more Americans hearing that. And the idea, again, with the Fox News approach is that we're going to reach out to those that may not agree with free trade in principle, that may not understand the importance to the U.S. economy that they do trade with us. So we are going to have a very aggressive and also different approach than we've seen in the past. We're not going to necessarily, as premiers, go to the same spots. We're not going to go to the major centers only. We're going to go into the heartland. We're going to go into communities that we need to bring facts to the rhetoric that they're hearing so Americans can be more informed of how important we are as a market destination for them. So it's going to be rapid and aggressive. And I can tell you that we're still going to do, in parallel to that, some of the more traditional types of advocacy efforts with decision makers and influencers, but there was a consensus in that room that given the results and where we are, we got to think differently. And this approach where we take on some of the commentators on Fox News or others that may be spewing out things that just aren't accurate or that aren't portraying exactly why the U.S. needs to have free trade with Canada is going to be important.
Premier, on interprovincial trade, and now that you've had today's talks, are you going to actually make changes to New Brunswick's Liquor Control Act and specifically the import rules for personal use?
So there's nothing to announce at the moment on internal trade, but what I can tell you is that our discussions went quite well. There would be some things that I think we were all ready to sign off on, but there were a few that we wanted to have a few more hours to discuss, so you can be certain that over the night and early into the morning, we're going to be having discussions on how we can move as many action items as possible to integrate the Canadian Free Trade Agreement. I think there's a bit of a challenge with the microphone there. If somebody can get that, we got it back. Can you hear me? You're good? So we have some things that I think we all agreed on, but we thought best to continue to work on other action items that we think we can get agreement to, and we will work over the next few hours and into the morning and early tomorrow morning to try to get as many action items as possible to ensure that we are acting on the Canadian Free Trade Agreement. Everybody in the room understands the importance of enacting the measures in the Canadian Free Trade Agreement more rapidly so we can drive innovation and ensure consumers across the country have choice. So there's a real appetite to move. Of course, the details are always important, and that's why we're going to take a few more hours tonight and tomorrow morning to try to get as many action items as possible. When it comes to beer specifically, there's an appetite there as well, but certainly it is one of the topics where there's not a consensus yet. But I think there is a consensus that something needs to be done. So what and how we do it is what's left to be discussed.
For that personal import level, is that something you're willing to change?
I am definitely willing to change New Brunswick's import level, yes.
J'aimerais revenir sur la taxe sur le carbone,
I'd like to come back to the carbon tax.
Continue.
Pouvez-vous peut-être être plus spécifique sur dans quelles circonstances vous accepteriez peut-être de changer ou de modifier votre position?
Je comprends très bien la question, mais j'espère que vous pouvez comprendre c'est très difficile lorsque c'est une question hypothétique, on a besoin de voir qu'est-ce que toutes les choses, toutes les pièces qui bougent, comment ils vont tomber. Alors, en effet, nous avons mis un plan en place ici, nous allons faire les détails connus bientôt avec le gouvernement fédéral pour démontrer comment que nous allons combattre les changements climatiques ici, comment que nous allons mettre un prix sur la pollution du carbone ici, et que nous allons en effet faire ça d'une façon où on peut faire croître notre économie, d'une façon que l'économie néo-brunswickoise peut créer des emplois et des possibilités pour les gens de la province. Nous allons travailler très fort pour assurer que cela peut avancer ici au Nouveau-Brunswick, mais avec cette dit, avec les pièces qui bougent, comme on dirait,
said, and with all the moving parts, if the Supreme Court of Canada,
il y aura besoin d'avoir une décision.
And I think we'll need a decision. If there is a decision that says that the federal government's plan is not working, that means that there are provinces that may not want to put a price on carbon, but for us, it's very important to reassess. And there are provinces out there as well, as you heard this morning, that have removed the mechanisms that were already in place. It remains to be seen whether they will restore those mechanisms, and if so, what they will amount to. So there are a lot of things to consider, but what I can tell you right now is this. We have put forward a plan that will help us to combat climate change. We will be doing that in such a way as to ensure that the consumers don't pay a cent more. And the large emitters will be forced to pay their fair share. And also, we noted that if there are changes in terms of the way the other provinces approach this, we will have to reassess the situation. But at this time, that is not the case, so it's very difficult to tell you exactly what kind of reassessment that will be. But right now, I can guarantee you once again that our plan There will be no increase in what consumers pay under our plan. Now, with respect to your campaign in the U.S., will this be a concerted campaign on the part of the premiers or the provinces, or will the provinces be acting alone, doing their own advertising? That's a good question. We will be working together as provinces and territories, but maybe one or two premiers will go in this or that part of the U.S. to talk about the need for trade with Canada, and then other premiers may do the same thing in other areas of the country, rather than all of us going to Boston or New York or Washington. This will be a chance to go to other regions of the country where the debate is also occurring, and it's just as intense as in Washington. So it's important for us to communicate the importance of trade for both the U.S. and Canada, and speak to as many Americans as possible. So this will be a collaborative effort, but perhaps there'll be one premier going here or two premiers going there, that sort of thing.
Bonjour, Monsieur Gallant, Hugo Lavallée de Radio-Canada.
Radio-Canada, you talked about the plan that you will be putting forward to fight climate change, and the Premier of Nova Scotia talked about their plan earlier, and of course Quebec has a plan. Is there not a possibility that there will be a totally piecemeal approach to this? Well, that is a message that I want to give to the country. I think our goal is to combat climate change. So the plans that are put forward to put a price on carbon and to develop other actions to combat climate change are all based on that goal. And that's what we intend to do. We don't want to increase what consumers are paying, but we do want to increase our investments year after year for several years into the future in those programs that will help us to combat climate change or to be more energy efficient, or other such projects that will help us to combat climate change. So I think that's important with the plans that are presented, that we all aim for fighting that climate change, and at the same time we have to reflect economic realities and the economic challenges facing our province, and our plan will certainly help us to do that. You spoke earlier to what is happening with Saskatchewan and Ontario, and they're joining the lawsuit. Do you have any doubts about that? Well, we do have some doubts. Now, we will certainly follow what happens, and we'll see how the courts respond to that. So it is certainly possible that they will win their case, and if that happens, that would be a major change in the way the country as a whole approaches climate change, and we would then be prepared to reassess our plan. Furthermore, if one province, such as Ontario, decides to remove the mechanism it already has in place and not to replace it, or replace it with something else, then obviously a reassessment will be necessary. That's not the case now, so we will wait to see what happens, and then we'll do the necessary follow-up and do our own analysis. But having said that, we have a plan that respects our economy here in New Brunswick, that will put a price on carbon, but in such a way as the consumers do not pay more. And of course, the large emitters will be paying their share. And every year we'll be investing more so that we can move forward with initiatives to combat climate change.
Hi there. There are 4 premiers who are here at this meeting for the first time. Did they bring with them a different sensibility, and have they changed the type of dynamic in the conference?
Well, you're right to say it's quite something that there's 4 new premiers. We were calculating it over dinner last night. I'm actually the 4th most senior premier around that table, and I haven't even finished my first mandate. So there's a bit of a turnover that we see, and it makes us all recognize that we are given an opportunity with a finite amount of time, and we have to make the best of it and do the best we can to improve the lives of the people we represent. The 4 individuals that were sitting at the table for the first time did a good job, in my opinion. They, as other premiers that I've seen over the years, are very committed to representing the people that have elected them, but at the same time understand that we're all Canadians. And they understand that there are different challenges, different opportunities in every region of our country, and that's one of the things that makes us a great country. They also recognize that some things are very difficult for some provinces, and some things are things that would help move forward other provinces. So I thought the four of them did a great job. There was a great dynamic around the table. I think some of the movement we've been able to make in some very key areas has demonstrated that. Now certainly dynamics can change quickly, but for the first day of official meetings, we're very pleased with where the conversations took us.
And who coined Fox News approach?
I'm not. The first time I heard it was John Horgan, but I don't know if he's the one that got the rights on that one. I'm not sure.
Oui, bonjour, Marco Belair-Cirino du Devoir. Il y a certains premiers ministres qui ont dit que la taxe fédérale sur le carbone est une mauvaise taxe, notamment pour les consommateurs
and for business. Now you're saying that consumers will not foot the bill for this and they won't pay a cent more. How can you ensure that the large emitters will pay their fair share and will not pass on their costs to consumers? Well, it's very important to point out that our plan that we already announced will ensure that we will be doing more to combat climate change year after year, and that means moving the revenues around that come from the gas tax and investing in those initiatives. And that will ensure that consumers do not pay a cent more under our plan. However, as you mentioned, the large emitters will be asked to pay their fair share, and in our case, a lot of businesses are involved in the export sector. So in most cases, there won't be an effect on consumers in New Brunswick. At the same time, we do want to ensure that these businesses and industries will be able to compete internationally, and that's why when we say they're going to pay their fair share, they will pay their fair share, but that will be done in such a way as to ensure that even if they're large emitters, they can still compete internationally. Journalists have been talking a lot about the controversy or maybe the appearance of cracks in the consensus on the carbon tax. Now, are there certain members of the Federation involved in talks in the hallways? Yes, I'd say it's mainly talk in the hallways, but I know that there are some provinces making changes to their policies, to the policies previously in place. And in New Brunswick, what is important to us is to analyze the whole situation, see what kind of mechanisms are in place, or if there aren't any, then there will be important considerations for us to look at in the coming weeks and months. Thank you very much.
I got it. I need to take that. He needs the notes. I know, but